Project Jupiter's a better kind of data center, using clean fuel cell technology to protect our air and water without impacting energy costs. Investing $50 million in the local water system? It's a data center done right.
Paid for by Oracle.
Hello, New Mexico, and welcome to another episode of Around the Roundhouse, a podcast featuring the policies, politics, and personalities of the land of enchantment. I'm your host, Daniel Chacón. Our guest this week is State Senator David Gallegos, the Republican nominee for Lieutenant Governor. Gallegos, who secured the nomination with 50% of the vote in a three-man contest, has served in the legislature since 2013. First as a member of the State House of Representatives before being elected to the State Senate in 2020. Gallegos, who describes himself as a proven conservative leader, is a longtime member of the Eunice School Board, where he has served for 26 years. Mr. Gallegos spent 30 years in the natural gas industry and is now a manager in his family's construction company. Senator, thank you for being our guest today.
Oh, thank you, and it's an honor to be with you.
Senator, I'm curious about that rifle behind you. Tell us a little bit about it.
It's quite unique. It's a 30-30. It's gold-plated. I will not shoot it. It's one that commemorates. So in 2012, I did the Centennial Cattle Drive from Jal to Carlsbad with 100 head of Longhorns. It commemorates our 100th anniversary, and there's two in the state that have the state house seal on it, and I own one of them. So it's quite an artifact. It has all kinds of engravings, everything from Billy the Kid. It's got just so much detail about our rich history in New Mexico.
May I ask, do you know who owns the other one?
Representative, or ex-state representative Bob Woolley.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Senator, while you now live in and represent the far southeast corner of the state, I read that you have roots in northern New Mexico. You were born in Holman, near Mora.
It was, and it's quite an interesting story of my brothers. I'm the only one that was born in New Mexico. We had a ranch in Antonito, Colorado, but my parents came over to Holman to hear my mother's dad preach. And for my sake, best thing they could ever done, I was native New Mexican.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your candidacy. Why did you decide to run for lieutenant governor, and what is it that you bring to the Republican ticket?
Well, and I think it brings balance. So let me back up a little bit. When President Trump won his election, I went to Albuquerque to visit with John Sanchez because I was really hoping to talk him in to run for governor, and I'd be his lieutenant governor. I think he's very, very capable after seeing everything he did under Governor Martinez. That didn't work, but we've been looking at it since then. And I did some other research to look at some of the possibilities, land commissioner, just what was available. This one fit with what I've done in the legislature. It should be a step up for me. It should be easy. And one of the reasons that I really like doing this is you look and just thinking through Howie Morales, how he keeps that Senate running in a really, really fine way. I want to replicate that. I want the people that know the legislative process to have the integrity to keep the Senate what it is. When I came over from the House, they had to educate me on the decorum of the Senate, because in the House you fight till midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning. In the Senate, they have a long-term view on policy to protect New Mexico. So I was very eager to get into the race to try to capture that, to try to get into the point that I can be a strong part of changing New Mexico.
And just as a follow-up, what do you bring? What advantages do you bring to the ticket?
So being rural, most of the candidates that I know are that Albuquerque area. And to me, there has to be, there again, balance of understanding what rural New Mexico needs and brings to the table. So I was raised in a ranch in Colorado. I actually graduated high school in Denver, so I understand large city too, but my roots are back into rural New Mexico. Living in Eunice, we're a population of 3,500. 712 kids K-12. That's pretty small. But the value points that we need are different in rural New Mexico than they are in the Albuquerque corridor. So whoever the governor candidate, we have a governor candidate now, but at that point, I was whoever the governor candidate is going to need balance because they need to understand the whole state. Now, Mayor Hull has done a great job in Rio Rancho, so he understands large city. What I'll give him is an understanding of the small communities and the ranching and the ag families. They're important to the state. It's not just oil and gas. I mean, I live in the Permian Basin and I love it. I appreciate it. But all of ag and all of the small communities have value to the state.
Senator, if elected, what would be your priorities as lieutenant governor?
Well, and I've actually talked to them quite a few when we're talking to the candidates. I'd like to look at bringing the OCD from Santa Fe down to Lee County in southeast. I'm not. You've got to find an office. What I think happens is before they leave Santa Fe, they know they got an issue. They're going to drive the 5.5 hours down here and see the issue. They come up with the penalties before they see the problem. And I'd like that industry to have someone in their area that actually knows who they are, what they're doing, and understands the community. Because what we do as a community directly affects the rest of the state. Thinking about the money, because these guys get up really early and work way late, and they work hard. I just think that the upper echelon of that industry from the state side need to be closer to the actual activity so they can understand the whole process. I think industry does a great job trying to prevent all losses because that's revenue that they lose. If it goes up in the air, into the flare, or into the ground, it causes problems, costs them money, but it also costs them product. So I just want someone down here to understand that. But I also like the idea of, Governor candidate Hall and I have talked about helping small businesses. So I work for my wife's family, small construction company. When I got there, we were over 107 employees now. It's a blessed thing for me to work for them and with them. But there's a lot of small companies that are 2 and 3 people in a business, and they're wondering, what is New Mexico going to do for me, the small guy? But what if we go in and we say, okay, your job is specifically, let's say, making labels, printing labels. What can we do as a state to help you get to 6 employees? So now you're 3, we get you to 6. Guess what? We just doubled the opportunity for New Mexicans. And yeah, it's great to have Intel come in. Those are once in a lifetime. But these small mom and pops, the restaurants, just even to the car dealership. If we can get a car dealership, say, okay, we're really good here in Lee County, but let's try to do one in Chavez County. So we see growth in that sector of our economy. Everything looks at, what the feds bring in, what our universities bring in, and what oil and gas brings in. So let's look at the smaller industry makers and let's see what we can do to help them because they matter.
I've always heard it said that small businesses are the backbone of New Mexico's economy. But Senator, you just mentioned oil and gas, which has contributed great amounts of revenue to the state of New Mexico. How do you think that Santa Fe has treated the oil and gas industry?
There are times when I was in the House that I really felt that we were appreciated. There'd be some bills that, we could actually negotiate on, that they're looking at opportunities to find middle ground. Anymore, it is pretty harsh, one-sided. Back in 17, I believe, I'd have to look back, I went to China to negotiate for New Mexico with John Sanchez, Greg Nybert, myself, and a few others. But we went to negotiate on oil and gas sales from Lee County, and we actually won that contract. Then Governor Martinez transferred out. Our current governor wouldn't sign that contract. But the important thing was, if you think through in their discussion on global warming and what we're putting in emissions in the atmosphere, China was going to take our natural gas liquefied to Ojinaga, to Tijuana, because they couldn't go through California, but they were going to use it to change their carbon footprint in China. They're coal powered right now, but they're going to revert to natural gas. They would cut their carbon footprint by half. To me, that's a victory for New Mexico and for the world. If you're talking global warming and carbon output, that would have been a victory. We did not do that. And I think it's because of the negative thoughts of if we're going to pollute here and pollute over there, it's sort of like a bad thing to do. So I would like people to understand. That's why I think that if we can get them down here to understand the industry, the people in the economy that we bring, then we can give a different message out on the value to New Mexico from oil and gas.
Senator, I wanted to switch topics a little bit. Something that's been in the news quite a bit in recent days, recent weeks, is the decision by Maggie Toulouse Oliver, the Democratic nominee for lieutenant governor, her decision to suspend her campaign. What's your take from that whole situation?
Well, and I hope, I've heard it's medical. I've heard other things too, but I hope that she's doing well. You always have to consider who she is and what she's done for us. She is seated Secretary of State. But I looked at it as, thinking backwards, when President Biden was in office and really, really fragile and ran for another term only to be replaced. I'm hoping that Maggie wasn't that placement, that after they get through the primary, because she's sort of the sweetheart of New Mexico. And so for them to remove her now, I think is a real hardship for her. And I can't speak for her, but when they do that, I would think that they need to think through Senator Pope, because Senator Pope got 20% of the vote. The others that are being considered were never voted on. So I would hope that they would consider her. I don't know when she gets better. I mean, it's still early. I don't know, in a month. Was told she put it on hold and not canceled her campaign. So if it's on hold and she gets to feeling better and comes back, then she can carry on with the race. I think Secretary Holland needs her more now than ever. But I think she at least gives, we're talking balance. I think she gives balance to that ticket. And if she comes back, I hope she is well enough to continue on. But if not, I would hope that the Democrat Party would look at Senator Pope, just because the factor is that he was voted on by his constituents, his people in his party. And so I would think that he'd be second in the running. And I know that there's other people, Leo Jaramillo's name's been, Commissioner Garcia Richards is interested in, there's others. So it's just one of those things that I hope that they do the right thing for the sake of the New Mexico citizens and not for the party itself.
But could that not work to the Republican Party's advantage?
Well, and I see advantage of her pulling out because it creates chaos, but I would rather win without having to say they're damaged by this. I would rather have them put the plan in place that gives them the best possibility for the state. That way, when I win, it's not Maggie's fault. It's the voters in New Mexico that voted us in. So I just, there again, I think that they need to look at their opportunities, wait to see what Secretary Toulouse Oliver or Lieutenant Governor candidate Toulouse Oliver does, but then just act appropriately from there.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in a moment.
Have you seen what's happening in Doña Ana County? Project Jupiter's a better kind of data center. Instead of traditional generators, it uses cleaner fuel cells to protect our air and preserve water without impacting energy costs for local residents. Project Jupiter even provides $50 million to improve Doña Ana County's water system. It's a data center, done right. Learn more at projectjupitertogether.com.
Paid for by Oracle.
Welcome back to Around the Roundhouse. Our guest is Senator David Gallegos, who is the Republican nominee for lieutenant governor. Gregg Hull, the former, as you mentioned, mayor of Rio Rancho, won the Republican nomination for governor. Are you guys getting along? And what's your path to victory?
No, actually, I really appreciate him. He called a strategy meeting early on. And, we went through, he's got a lot of really good ideas. There again, he did a great job in Rio Rancho. You go one street over into Albuquerque and there's fear and concern. So I'm thinking he's going to bring that type of mentality to protect the citizenry into the whole state now. But we've gone through and discussed a lot of his topics. I brought earlier the small business. He's got stuff that he wants to do with veterans and energy reliability, kids. The kids come first plan. It was really odd. He and I were talking, and I had reached out to him to see about going back and asking what Mississippi had done to change their education piece. We used to be 49th, 50th. They'd be 50th, we'd be 49th. We kept flopping back and forth. What he found in the Mississippi miracle is they take Governor Martinez's idea of not allowing the child to pass to the fourth grade till he could read at third grade level. And that moved him up to the top 15% of the nation. And so he's looking at what do we do to get our students to that baseline so they can succeed later. If you look at it, if we can get our kids into the education realm, teach them properly, get them educated and out, you're going to stop crime, you're going to stop drugs. There's so many things that are associated with the poverty level that not being educated brings. And so I'm happy that he's looking at that, but there's a lot of, public pensions. We've been talking about that. So he's got a lot of really good ideas on what he needs to do to advance New Mexico.
Senator, may I ask you what you believe are the top two pressing issues in New Mexico?
Well, to me, there again, I think energy is always going to be, from my sector, very, very important. I do, being on the school board, think energy is a high priority. I've seen it for years. Just watching the students after they graduate. I even told Secretary Scandera years ago, if she'd give me credit 5 years after graduation, our kids are successes. At graduation, it's a little bit iffy, because kids are kids and they're enjoying school instead of learning. But it's one of those things. I think education and energy, but there's so many things. You look at public safety. I go to Albuquerque and I'm grateful for this hotel. They've asked me to park under the Sally Port. And first time I got a little bit upset. They got me out of my room, come down, asked me to park in Sally Port. And I said, what's the problem? I'm in a legalized parking lot. I'm in a spot. I'm not taking two. She says, no, but they like king ranches here. We'd like you to have your truck tomorrow. That's a little scary,
Yeah.
and I appreciate them. But it gave me a different view of when you enter Albuquerque, there's a lot of concern there. And I think statewide, we need to teach our constituents to respect police officers. Again, when I was a kid, you saw a police officer, you knew they meant business and they were the person in authority. Now, do we have bad? In anything you do, you're going to find someone that's abusing the system.
Right.
And I think the majority of those can be weeded out while we elevate the rest of the public safety sector, because firemen, they do the same thing. You never care about them till they're on your front doorstep, because then all of a sudden you have the need and you want the very best experienced person there. So I think those, the public safety, the energy, like I say, with the small business idea he brought up, I'm going to love. There are just so many places we can go, but I think those are the big ones for me.
Okay. Sticking on the topic of the campaign, it's no secret that Mr. Hull has struggled somewhat in the fundraising arena, and Democratic gubernatorial nominee Deb Haaland is heading into the November election with a sizable war chest. How will you compete with those large sums of money that Secretary Haaland has shown she can bring in?
Well, and we're up. I was up in Albuquerque the last 2 days and doing fundraising calls, and they're getting better. I think during the primary, they're worried on who the nominee was going to be, but I think that we've turned that corner. But we've actually talked, and Governor-elect Hall and I were going over the fundraising piece. Well, he's got friends that are going to really, really support him. I've got friends that are going to really, really support me. And part of the dialogue is them supporting both of us. So I can get 12-4, he can get 12-4, and pretty soon you get a base of people that are willing to fund our campaigns. And it's showing them value. I mean, I want for you, when I'm talking to you about investing in my campaign, I need to give you rationale and reason why. And I think most of the people understand. Now, this is not estate money. This is in-state money. And I had one she's a lady that sent me a $5 check. I actually called her son and said, do you mind if I keep the check? I'll deposit the $5 cash. And he says, why? I said, because her $5 matters, because I know her personally. But you get people to invest in you and see the overall change possibilities for New Mexico. If they're willing to do that, even with her having a huge war chest, I think we have a really good chance. I feel great about it. Actually, I feel really good. We did some work up north in the Pecos area and couldn't believe the people that rallied around because me being Hispanic. Now, he's not Hispanic, but he did win those northern New Mexico counties being a white gentleman. And that's odd in New Mexico because usually that Norteño group wants a Hispanic last name. So I'll give him credit. He worked hard. I think he's going to continue to work hard, and it's just getting the people to understand the value of the campaign and the willingness for us to make a change for New Mexico.
So do you think that you all will be competitive when it comes to money?
And I don't think dollar to dollar, but I think we're going to be closer than what it was in the primary. If you think through Bregman, and I like him, I think he did a good job in his run. He gave us a lot of information for our campaign. I don't know how we use it yet, but he did a good job exposing things, some fallacies for Secretary Holland. But I don't think we're going to be dollar to dollar. But if we use it wisely and we get up somewhere close to that, I think that it's going to be a really good race, and I think the outcome is going to be favorable for us.
So did I understand correctly that DA Bregman basically did some of the opposition research for you all during the primary?
He did a great job. I mean, just to say, he made our job easier.
All right. Senator, let's talk about your record in the legislature. You've said making baby boxes available in New Mexico is one of your proudest accomplishments as a legislator. How did you, what prompted your involvement in that project? And for folks who may not understand or know what baby boxes are, what are they?
Let me start with that. So the baby box is basically a bassinet in a wall that's air conditioned, heated, so it's temperature controlled, it's camera controlled. It's got the front entrance when you open it. Once you place the child, and it's weight sensitive, so if you put a box in there, it's not going to have the same alarm as if you put a child in there. So everything is thought through thoroughly. And once the door is closed, well, let me back up. When the door opens, there's a packet of information that falls at the parents' feet, hopefully the mother or father, could be a grandfather, grandmother, but some member. And it gives detail on some support information for the parents. So even, let's say the mother needs medical attention or even emotional assistance, they have places they can go, and it's all in a packet. So that stays on the outside. They close the door, and then they cannot open it. Right away, it alarms the fire station or hospital, because we've got two of them in hospitals, that there's a child there. So then they come and recover and care for the child. So one of the problems is that child has to have immediate care because it was probably not born in a sanitized environment. Let's start there, because there's things at my home that are different from a hospital. So that child has to have immediate care, and the fire station or the hospital will do that. They'll get that child the care. Now, the mom or dad can have a change of heart. They can apply it through CYFD, because CYFD takes custody of the child. They can apply it to CYFD and go through a questionnaire, and they'll investigate to see if they can retrieve that child for the betterment of the child. We all make mistakes. But the thing that started this in Hobbs, we had a young lady that threw her child in a dumpster, and we had some dumpster divers, some drug people that jumped in that next evening and found this child in there alive. And his name's Saul, lives here outside of Hobbs, a really handsome little young man. But it prompted that how many, and this is sort of morbid, how many of our children have ended up in the dump through one of the dumpsters. At the same time this was going on, and I'll give them total credit, we had some really good legislators, Democrat legislators, that were in the Espanola area that were already working on this. So Espanola installed their first safe haven box without state money. John Wickersham, who's one of the fire chiefs down there, he was working on this before the Hobbs baby was ever thrown in the dumpster. So it was easy to get on because there are already legislators who've been working on this. I got on. It's been a success to get, and I'll go back to giving credit where credit's due. That first year that I was a part of this, Governor Lujan Grisham decided she would take $300,000 of her dollars to put into the installation. That needs to be thought about. Governor Lujan Grisham took the initiative to come up with the capital for the installs. And I'll give her credit for that. We don't agree on a lot of things, but she started this. She helped start it. And she's helped me along the way on trying to call for bills. So we've had discussions with her office, with CYFD, public safety. We want to do the best job to protect the mom so that way she's not sought out as a criminal. She's trying to do the very best for that child, and that's got to be hard to give up a child to give him a chance, him or her a chance at life. So I'll always try to do what I can to protect that mama. But the reality is we've got four children, 3 little boys and 1 little girl. The 3 boys I have regular visits with.
Oh,
One of them comes over our house on a regular basis. The other one I've gone over to his house. The one in Belen that now lives in the fire station, fireman. The fireman that took him out of the baby box is his dad now. And to see that, to go from there, to see that circular motion come back to point A and it be a success, tells me there's a lot of value. There's a little girl that was here in Hobbs that is in the Albuquerque area. One day I pray I'll meet her. Not that it has anything to do with me, but it shows the value of life. I'd love to see what these little individuals become years from now. I'd be willing to say one of them's going to be a better legislator than I am. But it's just having that opportunity to do the right thing and give that mother some coverage because she's doing extremely hard. As a male, I'm not a female, but as a father, I would have a hard time giving up my daughter. It's even harder for the mother because it's from within. And so for her to do that for that child, if I had a hat on, I'd take it off for her because it's huge. But I appreciate you bringing that up. I get discussion points all over the state, and even in DC, I've got up there to speak on it. So there's a lot of people that associate the name, but it's really more about the mom and her option than what I've done.
Let me ask you if we can turn to other pieces of legislation that have been a little bit more controversial. And Democrats describe you as one of the legislators who's furthest to the right. They cite your opposition to conversion therapy ban for minors, as well as the repeal of a 1969 law that made it a crime to perform an abortion in New Mexico. How would you describe yourself politically?
I'd say they're right. And the reason they're right, and I'm going to say I'm further right because I like being right all the time. I think we as a state should start out thinking about parental consent. There's a lot of people say, well, you've never gotten anything done. The easiest bill is notification and consent. We can't even get notification. So when a child, let's say transgender, a child goes in public schools and says, okay, let's say his name's David and he wants to be Donna. He goes in and tells the teacher, well, the teacher has to start the process of getting him assistance to go from boy to girl. Parents don't know about it. And that discussion has to happen, I think, for many reasons. Medical, behavioral health. There's going to be a lot of things that come up after the transition that could have been discussed before the transition to make the better decision for the child. Can you change their mind? Probably not. but it could be. But I think that's where they look at is I don't have any room to give when it comes to notification or parental consent. And the appeal of the law, there again, it was brought to the state. This state, not me, this state legislature voted to make this abortion capital of the world. I actually spoke in DC, and a gentleman from Canada says they watched New Mexico and their socialist nation, their abortion up to the point of birth. They're actually adding diabetes to their euthanasia. And they said they're appalled at that time. Now it's no longer that way. But at that time, we're the only state in the nation that used abortion for tourism. Those are his words. Now he says there's two because they look at us as drawing people in here for the abortion industry. So I think that I'll always stick with parental notification and parental consent. And I think that puts me on an extremely small sliver, very, very right, but I think it's for the right reason.
Senator, on a very related topic, you were actually one of the plaintiffs who challenged the abortion ban repeal in court. What is your stance on abortion? And do you think that in a blue-leaning state like New Mexico, that will hurt you at the ballot box in November?
Well, and I think for some areas it might, but I think that if you look at the value points, so abortion is going to happen anyway. So they talk about it as women's health, or to me, if a doctor, if there's a young lady that needs an abortion to save her life, the doctors already do it. What the difference is, that's women's health. This is an abortion industry. There's a difference. When you're doing nothing but abortions, it's no longer women's health. Because now they are, I take that back, now they're starting to have sonograms in there and other things. The original abortion centers were just run you in, run you out like cattle, take care of the problem, and you go back to doing. Who they're helping are those that are trafficking humans. Because that trafficked child has to have that cleared out to go back to work for the trafficker. And so there's so many things that are harsh in that industry that I would rather we have some kind of options. I think we need to be able to set some boundaries. Is it, late term? Is it, I don't know how to get to a point that we could negotiate a middle point on this, because in some people's eyes, it's all or nothing. And I would rather have the conversation continue.
I was going to ask you on that topic, if elected lieutenant governor, would you seek changes as it relates to our abortion laws in New Mexico, or as you mentioned earlier, parental consent? Would you seek any specific types of changes if elected?
Well, see, and I'll go back to Governor Martinez, and I loved her to death. Her and I had specific discussions. Part of the job as governor is to run legislation. I know they do. They have really good ideas and they push, but that's not the job. Matter of fact, with her, I told her I don't govern and she doesn't legislate. And we had a great conversation over it. But that's what I would say now. If a bill comes before us and I don't even get to vote on it or veto, that's the governor's job. I actually tried to relay that information to some of Ron Ketty's colleagues when he was running for governor. He didn't need to fight that fight. Bill Scherer, myself, and Rod Montoya were the ones they should have been asking those questions to, not Governor candidate Ron Ketty, because he can't sign a bill until it becomes a bill. It's got to come to him before he can sign it or veto it. But at that point in time, he gets to make the decision, or Governor Lujan Grisham, and they do whatever they want to for their rationale, whatever it is. But as lieutenant governor, I get to manage the Senate and try to get things through. So would I, if it's out there and it's a good bill for the state of New Mexico, all right, I'll help. If it's a benefit for the state, I'll do everything in my power to make sure the state succeeds.
Okay. Senator, I hope I didn't ask this earlier, but I want to make sure I get it in the record. When you announced your bid for lieutenant governor, you said that New Mexico needs people in office who know how to work with the Trump administration to secure our border and get the economy moving again. Are you a supporter of the president's?
I like a lot of what he does. I would word things different, uh, but I stand on that message because you look, we had a meeting with Governor Lujan Grisham when President Trump warned us, you do this, 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 and this, you'll lose revenues from the feds. So what did we do? We did this, 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 and this. Then we throw a fit when we lose the revenue. I would hope that as lieutenant governor, I would be able to sway the governor to listen to the rhetoric and understand what he means and take it serious. If you're going to have open border, you're going to lose this. I don't know where Governor Hull's on that. I think closing the borders wise. I've even talked to Archdiocese on it because we have so many people that cross into New Mexico and die due to heat stroke that if they came through the entryway during the Biden administration, they got somewhere to go, they got money, they got food, they got water. So that would have been the best route to success in that program than crossing over and dying past Crystal Lake because that mountain's treacherous and it's hot. So I would think that, in anything we do, whatever the governor does, I would hope that I'd have influence on having him understand the pros and cons. I don't even know what his thoughts are on President Trump. We've not gotten there. I like him. I think he shows success. I think he's a smart businessman. And I think for that, you need to pay attention because if you do not do certain things, it's going to cost you revenue. Then we were mad whenever he followed his exact words. We're trying to figure out why he took money from us. After we, as the Senate, heard Governor Lujan Grisham say, you do this, he's going to take money. You do this, he's going to take money. And you do this. So we followed the exact opposite path, and then we're crying because we're losing federal money. So I would say I understand him. I've never met him. Would I meet him? I'd like to give him some advice. But it's just one of those things that I think that as a businessman, he understands need and how to resolve it. So I say I like him. I would definitely consider shaking that man's hand and telling him thank you for some of the things he's done nationally. Not so much New Mexico because there's quite a clash there. So,
But let me ask you as a quick follow-up question, what advice would you give President Trump?
I would ask him to think through what he says ahead of time. He shoots off the hip. I do also. But as a Hispanic, I think that there's ways to put the emphasis in and not make it sound so abrasive. And I'm a legislator, and we say a lot of stupid things, but it's one of those things that he's pretty hard. He's pretty staunch. He has one thought and he spits it out, and there's no controlling it. I don't want him to change who he is. I just want him to consider other people's personalities and their feelings.
Okay. Senator, the last thing that I wanted to ask you about is that, we've seen quite a bit of infighting at the Republican Party of New Mexico. There still, you don't have a chair. And unfortunately, it was reported this week that the party's treasurer has been charged in a fatal hit and run. What is it going to take for the state GOP to get its house in order?
We're hoping a new governor. And with that accident the other day in Las Cruces, you can only pray for that family of the victim, and on both sides, it's tragedy. In the state party part, I've been telling them for a long time, the only one they're hurting are the candidates. This could be resolved in December with a regular vote. That's the timing it would have happened anyway. If they just all go into a hold pattern, let the process work, let us get past the election, and then have at it. I mean, it gets back to the point is the fight is an ongoing fight, and we ought to be, and I think there's a lot of people trying to do that now. Let's just give it time, get past November, and then let's clear the slate and start over. Because what we're hurting now are the New Mexican candidates and ultimately the election. So I'm thinking people are going to start putting a hold on things because they know how important this next election is.
Okay. Senator, it's been great fun to spend time with you. You made me laugh a couple of times, as you have in the past. Am I missing to ask you anything, sir? Anything you would like to add? Would you like to plug your website?
Oh, I would. I'm at Gallegos for New Mexico, Gallegos for NM, spelled out, Gallegos, FORNM.com. And also David Gallegos for NM. Think through this, David Gallegos, NM at Facebook. But no, I'd love for people, I try to get back every day, phone calls or emails. The emails have been overwhelming, but I try to keep up with all that. But no, just that we're willing to work, we're willing to listen. And I think the best thing we can do is save our state. So thank you for allowing me on, because I see you around the Roundhouse all the time. You do a great job. I'm going to praise you for being balanced. I appreciate that you'll look me in the eye and you'll ask me questions that I may not like, but you're not derogatory to me when I have maybe not the answer you wanted, but my opinion to me matters. Sometimes that doesn't work that way in the Roundhouse. So I'll give you kudos for doing what you do and the way you do it. And I think you're fair to both sides, and that doesn't always happen.
I appreciate that so much, sir. Thank you very, very much. And buena suerte on the campaign trail. And again, thank you to Senator Gallegos for joining us. And as always, thank you to our viewers for tuning into Around the Roundhouse. Join us every week as we talk to newsmakers in the political realm by subscribing through Apple, YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. For the latest developments, including our ongoing coverage of the November general election, follow us online at SantaFeNewMexican.com, where you can also subscribe to the best newsletter in the state of New Mexico, the Roundhouse Report. Until next time, I'm Daniel Chacón, and this has been Around the Roundhouse.
Have you seen what's happening in Doña Ana County? Project Jupiter's a better kind of data center. Instead of traditional generators, it uses cleaner fuel cells to protect our air and preserve water without impacting energy costs for local residents. Project Jupiter even provides $50 million to improve Doña Ana County's water system. It's a data center, done right. Learn more at projectjupitertogether.com.
Paid for by Oracle.